أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك المظلومين، صلى الله عليك يا سيد الشهداء، صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. اللهم العن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم العن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم العنهم جميعا. ورد عن النبي الأكرم صلى الله عليه وآله أنه قال: إن أفضل أعمال أمتي انتظار الفرج، تعجيلا لفرج صاحب الأمر والزمان. ارفعوا أصواتكم بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. It has been narrated from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to have said, the best acts of my nation is to await the faraj. And when we say faraj here, we are talking about, or the Holy Prophet was talking about, preparing or awaiting the return of Imam al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif. So of course, when we talk about a hujjah or a proof on earth, we are talking about every time or every era there must be a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the earth. And since the beginning of time until today, there's always been a hujjah. There's always been a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is this the case? It's because it is out of the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He places a hujjah. Because later on the day of judgment, if we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, and He asks us, why didn't you follow the message of Islam, for example, or the religion of Islam? We will turn around and say, you never sent us a proof, you never sent us a hujjah, and I wasn't guided. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a hujjah for every time and every era. It's so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish us for something that He lacked in. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Allah does not lack. And this is why in every era, in every time, there is a hujjah. So when we are talking about the Imam of our time, we are talking about two stages. And of course, the first stage is called the Ghaiba al-Sughra, which is a first and minor occultation. And this went on for around 69 years and a half, approximately. And in this occultation, the Imam was preparing the Shia to the major occultation, which we'll get to. So in this occultation, the Imam appointed 4 representatives to represent him. Of course, one at a single time, or one at a time. So one would represent him until he passes away, then the next one takes over, and so forth, until the last one. So the Imam was in a state of ghaibah. No one could see him except those 4 people. And through those 4 people, the Imam will tell the Shia of their duties, tell them of their jurisprudential laws, and the Shia were being prepared for what is going to come. So, before the 4th ambassador or the 4th representative of the Imam passed away, the Imam sent him a letter. And in that letter he said, in 6 days you will pass away, and tell the Shia that after you pass away there is no representative. No one's going to represent me anymore directly. And now the time is going to come where you're going to have no access to me, in a sense that there is no direct person that's going to represent the Imam and tell us what the Imam is requires from us. And this is where the major occultation started. And of course, it is happening until today. We await the return of the Imam. Now, going back to the hadith we quoted earlier, the Holy Prophet said, the best acts of my ummah, the best acts of my nation is to await the faraj. What does that mean? Why does he say that we have to await the Imam? And what does waiting even mean? What does this term intidhar actually mean? Because I could be sitting at home and waiting. Does that mean I'm actually waiting for the Imam? Here we are talking about something about waiting that is not passive. If someone is sitting at home and saying they are waiting for the Imam and doing nothing, it's not called waiting. This is passive waiting. And this is not what the Holy Prophet is saying. The Holy Prophet wants from us practical waiting. And this waiting starts from us. And I'll explain what type of waiting we are talking about in an example. I'll give 2 examples. It's like when a student is in primary school and they are waiting to get into high school. Is the wait they are doing, is it just them going to class and doing nothing? No, they're actually working towards it. When someone is in primary school, they are working towards high school. This is their wait towards high school. So they have to practically study to get to high school. When they get to high school, they want to get to where? University. Do they just do nothing and study and do no study to get to high school or university, sorry? Of course not. They need to study, they need to put the effort, study it for hours to get to university. This is the waiting we are talking about. Another example is something that we're all going to go through. And this is like awaiting death. We are awaiting death. But how are we awaiting death? Are we just sitting there and waiting for death to come to us? Of course not. We have to put effort. We have to work towards death. So that when we die, we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a slate saying, this is our a'mal and this is what we've done in this world. Because essentially, we want heaven. And we cannot get heaven if we do nothing in this world. So this is the waiting we are talking about. It's practical waiting. There are things that we must do within us to reach this stage, to reach the dhuhur of the Imam. Because if the Imam returns and we haven't prepared for his return practically, then that might even be detrimental to us. It might even be that we are that unready for the imam, we give him up, for example, or leave him. And this is where it becomes dangerous. So of course, with the waiting, there are two types. There is individual waiting, and there is collective waiting. Individual is, of course, what a single person does individually. And collectively is what we do as a group. So all of us, together, what we do. I will only focus on individual waiting, because collective waiting is a very big topic that requires a lot of research. And collective waiting is something that is done on maybe even a global perspective, a global way. So when we talk about individual waiting, we have to talk about it from a few ways. The first way is how we can work on ourselves. And of course, one of the best ways, or something that we have to work on, is our akhlaq. The way we treat others, our manners, the way we portray ourselves to the wider community. Are we people that when we are looked at, they say, wow, this person is very nice, this person is very well mannered? Or are we looked at as people that are dangerous, people that aren't respectful? Because unfortunately, some people's actions reflect on the majority of people. And we have narrations from our Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that states, كونوا دعاة لنا بغير ألسنتكم. Be preachers to our cause without using your tongues. And one of the ways to preach without using your tongue is through your akhlaq and the way you portray yourself. And one of the ways we can work on within our akhlaq is working on our tongue. Because once you control your tongue, you can control other things as well. Because if you have no control of your tongue, then you might say something that's offensive to someone. You might say something that's going to hurt someone. You might slander someone, curse, swear. Say something that you'll regret later on. And then this might lead to bigger issues and bigger sins. So if we start with controlling our tongue, we can control other sins as well. Because it starts from this organ. And of course, another thing that we have to work on is our ibadat. If we don't pray on time, if we don't respect our parents, if we don't, for example, fast, pray, pay khums. For example, if you're able to go hajj, you go hajj. If you lack in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that can also affect you. Islam isn't just a religion of mainly akhlaq. Of course, it's a religion of ibadah, worship, and good morals, good akhlaq. And this is why we have to work on these two, our akhlaq and our ibadat. Another thing that we must do, and unfortunately today this is being targeted, is following our scholars. Today, there are certain people from within our Shia that are attacking our ulama. And people don't realize this. But once you attack our scholars, you are attacking our foundation today, our core foundation, that our madhab, our sect is being held by, is our scholars. And if we don't stick to our scholars, we're going to fall in a deep hole. And this is why it's very important that we follow our scholars. Because the imam wanted us. When the imam sent that letter to the fourth ambassador, he told him, let the Shia follow the narrators of our hadith. And the interpreters of the narrators of our hadith are our scholars today. And if we don't follow the scholars, then who's going to interpret the hadith for us? Because there are some people today that come out and say, you don't need to follow a scholar, you can just read the narrations and you'll be fine. But even within the narrations, there are contradictions. A narration will say something, and then another narration will say the complete opposite. Now, how do you reconcile between these two? We are not equipped with the right information, the right tools to be able to reconcile between these two. And this is why it's important that we stick to our scholars. And of course, the right scholars. And another thing that we have to work on individually, and this is why I'm saying that we have to work on our individual effort, and this is part of the waiting for the imam, is we have to acquire knowledge. We have to be people that have ma'rifah, that have understanding. And we have to understand, of course, the mission of the imam. The whole process of how he will return, what he will do. All of these, we have narrations that talk about this. If we educate ourselves about this, if we look at the lives of the Ahl al-Bayt before the imam, we'll be able to have a bit of an understanding of how his mission will be like, and how he will be like, and how he will treat others. Of course, it's important that we also teach ourselves and learn the signs of the reappearance. The imam, of course, we know that he will return, and there will be signs that come before his official return. And of course, we have many signs that are recorded in our narrations. But some of them are called indefinite signs, and we have definite signs. And the definite are 5. And if we are able to learn these 5, we will have an understanding of all these movements that come out today. There are movements today that preach for things that, and people are following these these movements because of the lack of ma'rifah that they have. For example, someone that comes and claims that they are the Yamani, which is one of the signs, that the appearance of the Yamani. If someone comes and claims that, and you've got people that follow him, it means that there is a lack of understanding. And this is why it's important that we read the narrations that talk about this and educate our youth, educate our families. And the more we get educated about the return of the Imam, the more we are ready. The more we are following what Rasulullah had said, in saying that the best acts, when Rasulullah says the best acts, I cannot comprehend the reward that he's talking about, because that is the best act you can do today, awaiting the dhuhr. And of course, and this is where the last point, and I'll end on this, if we want to understand the mission of the Imam, we have to understand the mission of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. There are many similarities between what will happen in the return of the Imam and the mission of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Both of them will start from Mecca. So Imam al-Hussein started his mission leaving Mecca. Imam al-Hujjah ajjalallahu ta'ala farjahu al-Sharif, when he returns, he will return from the Kaaba, from Mecca. And Imam al-Hussein will be headed towards where? Or he was heading towards al-Kufa. Imam al-Hujjah ajjalallahu ta'ala farjahu al-Sharif, he will be headed towards Kufa, which is where he will establish his capital. And the enemies of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam will be similar to the enemies of the Imam al-Hujjah. Because, as we know, the Imam will come and avenge the killers of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. What does that mean? It means the ancestors or the descendants of those that killed Imam Hussein will be alive during the time of Imam al-Hujjah and will have the same values as those killers back then. And of course, we've got narrations that say that the return of Imam al-Hujjah will be on the day of Ashura. So we'll just, if you understand the similarities between the two, you realize that Imam al-Hussein and Imam al-Hujjah are connected, intertwined with each other. And once we understand this, we'll be able to have an understanding of the mission of Imam al-Hujjah ajjallahu ta'ala farjahu al-Sharif. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه ومن مقوية سلطانه والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين.